What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Matt Goes to the Movies. And today it is Rob and myself doing the movie Justice League. Now, in anticipation of the Snyder Cut coming to HBO Max on March 18th, Rob and I thought it would be, Rob, should we say fun to review Justice League?
I'm not sure if fun's the right word for it. Informative for sure. It's been a while since I've actually seen the theatrical release of it. So in anticipation of what we're actually going to get with the Snyder Cut, I was actually looking forward to revisiting this so that I've got a frame of reference when we get the unprecedented director's cut on HBO Max soon.
Yeah, I mean, it certainly is unprecedented what we're getting, and it's going to be very interesting to see what the difference is, because even from the trailers, you can tell that the Snyder Cut is a completely different cut from what we got in the theatrical version. And you can see, going back, and I don't know if it was the same for you, but rewatching Justice League, it's even more apparent the small parts that got left in the movie that are Snyder and what is Whedon. I think everything is very clear now, the cuts in the movie.
I think it'll be even more clear once we actually get to see the Snyder Cut. I mean, to the best of your knowledge, what percentage of this film that we have available to us now was actually Snyder's original compared to how much of it was reshot? I mean, I think it's like 80 or 90%, isn't it?
Yeah, it was really, when I was reading the results, it was like these crazy numbers that 80 pages of script got rewritten. You can certainly tell from like color palettes, the way certain things are framed. It's a lot of change, especially to a movie that really seemed to have been completed except for post-production for Snyder's version. So to go that far with what we got with the theatrical version, just all around, there's a lot of weird things about how this movie was released and how it's being re-released. It's certainly, like you said, unprecedented.
It's so bizarre. And for most listeners who may not be familiar, so a page of screenplay is about a minute of screen time. So 80 pages is about 80 minutes, which is, for a 2-hour movie, that's more than half. So you got to wonder how much was kept. You got to wonder, how much of what we have available to us on HBO Max will actually be anything like what we get in a 4-hour Justice League movie that I don't know if I need 4 hours, but I know you're super excited for the Snyder Cut. And I will actually say this, having rewatched this recently, I am actually more excited for the Snyder Cut version because, and I know we'll definitely get into this more, but there's parts of this movie. This movie's not well regarded. Okay, we can just get that out of the way. It is not critically well reviewed. It did not make back its budget at the box office initially. It's not well regarded by most fans. But it is actually a better movie than I think it gets credit for. And it doesn't get credit for a lot. But there's parts and pieces here. There's some really great casting. There's some good performances. There's some good bones to this that, if so much of what we saw was rewritten and reshot, and what Snyder has is using the best of what's available, this could actually be pretty good. But I'll tell you, I'm hearing there's a recent story from Warner Brothers that they're saying they were not impressed with the Snyder Cut. I don't know if you've read that or not, but there's definitely some conflicting stories about how good it's actually going to be. At one point, it sounded like the Snyder Cut was going to maybe be kind of retconned as the official version of Justice League. And as this movie did very poorly, it seemed like the only DCEU characters that were going to be moving forward were Wonder Woman and Aquaman, and their solo films have done well. But it seemed like Henry Cavill was done. It seemed like Affleck was definitely done. There was so much talk about a standalone Bat film that was coming that he just completely said, nope, I'm done. I want nothing to do with this anymore. But now we're hearing he's back. There was supposed to be a Cyborg movie. There was supposed to be a Flash movie. There was talk about Green Lantern. There was multiple Justice League sequels planned. And then all of that kind of got scrapped because of how poorly this movie did and the reception to this. But then as the Snyder Cut momentum built, it seems like like some of this is coming back. It sounds like, we've heard that Ben Affleck is involved in the Flashpoint film. We're going to see him, which is exciting. They have continued on with Wonder Woman in a second film. There's probably going to be a second Aquaman film.
They've released production photos for the Flash movie, so we know that that's actually up and running.
But there's some ugliness with Ray Fisher and his cyborg character, and whether or not he's ever going to be back. There's certainly a lot of just, I guess no other way to put it. There's just ugliness about some of his allegations about some of the stuff that happened on set with Joss Whedon. So it's, if nothing else, the theatrical version of Justice League and then what becomes the Snyder Cut is such a compelling, fascinating story. Whether or not the films are actually any good, it's almost not as interesting as the story around them.
Yeah, that's a great point. But let's talk about Justice League.
I suppose we have to.
Listen, fans. What we're going to do here is we're actually going to get into the spoilers portion. We're going to start talking about this movie because I think we covered, a lot of our thoughts about this movie here in that opening segment there. So if for some reason you haven't seen this version of Justice League and you're just now saying, oh, I'm going to watch this because of the Snyder Cut release, this is where you would pause this episode and you would go watch Justice League. But for anybody who's not afraid of spoilers, here we go. And one of the things that was a huge, it's not controversy, but it came into a laughing stock about this movie, was the fact that they had to de-digitalize Henry Cavill's mustache because he was filming Mission Impossible. And right out of the gate for me, I go and see this movie in the theater. I was supposed to go with my girlfriend at the time, and I was so eager to see this movie that I did not wait for her to get out of work. I went and saw it first thing in the morning, which I had to hide from her when we went back and saw it at 6:00. So I actually subjected myself to this movie twice in the same day when it first released. But you open with a shot of Henry Cavill, and you can tell immediately something's wrong with this dude's face. I don't understand why you open the movie like that.
If you weren't going to be able to make the CG look better, then I think you just have to scrap it and you have to stick with what was available. I think we're going to spend a lot of time talking about why some of these decisions were made. And you think about, a movie that we just said was pretty much done and just needed the post-production supervised. That's always been part of my reticence about if the Snyder Cut's going to actually be any good or not, because Joss Whedon, coming off of films like The Avengers, as a director we have faith in. He's a director we trust for these kinds of things. And he looked at what he had to work with and he said, oh, holy crap, I got to add 80 more pages to this. What about the original stuff he had to work with made him decide to do that and ultimately say, okay, yep, the mustache looks really bad, digitally removed, but it's the best we got. So we'll just move forward with this. I share excitement, but also apprehension about what the Snyder Cut is going to be of this film. But holy cow, that opening, it didn't really even seem necessary. I mean, if you want to try to make it feel that people are mourning the loss of Superman, we don't need this opening. We don't need it at all. It doesn't, the kids that are doing the podcast or whatever, we don't see them again. They don't matter. You don't know their names. Like it's pointless.
Yeah. And, one thing that, again, I think based on some of your comments that rewatching, again, I just said I put myself through seeing this movie twice on its opening day. I've actually watched it now 6 times in total. I've watched this movie. And another thing that just is really odd to me is the whole apparently world shift on how they view Superman. Because at the end of Batman v Superman, there were still people that were mad because they blamed him for the Capitol bombing when they were having that trial and he was there. It's not like people really love Superman in Batman v Superman. And whether or not we'll see the Snyder Cut maybe go on that, I feel like this movie kind of ignored some of the things in Batman v Superman, and it just made everybody seem like everybody was in love with Superman. And some of the themes, and especially I want to get to the opening scene with Batman when we first see him and the criminal, which to me was a really cringeworthy line at the end by this guy. I was just confused at how all of a sudden everybody really did mourn Superman, because there's not a really good transition there.
It's not. And there's a lot of this film that it seems like decisions were made for convenience of plot, not because it actually makes sense. And you're right. The death of Superman certainly is one. And, one of the things that frustrates me when we get comic or film adaptions of classic, iconic comic storylines is when they're wasted. So previously I talked about how I enjoy, just as a film, Thor Ragnarok, but I resent the fact that we'll never truly get a film version of Planet Hulk and World War Hulk, which is just an incredible arc in the comics. So they kind of bastardized it really for a piece of the Ragnarok movie. The death of Superman is something that could have been a truly just fascinating film. Could have, first of all, having to introduce Doomsday and Batman v Superman, which is, oh my God, I feel stupid just saying that title. It's so dumb. I can't help Batman v Superman. Oh my God. But the film was just trying to do too much. You're rebooting Batman. You're trying to kickstart a connected universe.
With GIF files, by the way.
Yeah. And you're introducing a new Wonder Woman. You're introducing a new Lex Luthor. You're introducing Doomsday. Like, what's one of the things I hate about that film is how they wasted Doomsday. That should have been its own film. The death of Superman should have been its own film, and it should have hit a certain way. And it's wasted. It is absolutely wasted between this film and Batman v Superman. I really think partially part of the reason this movie is viewed so poorly is we've seen comic movies executed so well. We've seen the Avengers. We talked about it. That just lands on every level. We previously had Christopher Nolan's, Dark Knight trilogy that really helped everybody understand that comic movies can actually be well put together films, not just, guys in tights slugging each other in the face.
They can be film.
They can be film. We've had Logan. We've had all of these things that have, challenged the idea that superhero films are just, throw popcorn in your face and just enjoy what, the spectacle in front of you, but could actually have emotion. We've seen so many great examples of film in the superhero genre. This film is not one of those. It just isn't. And we wanted it to be so badly. I mean, look, it's not Dark Phoenix either. It's not X-Men Origins Wolverine. But on a rewatch, look, this movie is not Batman and Robin. It's not that level of bad. There is a lot of interesting things. There is some great casting. Gal Gadot as Wonder Woman is fantastic.
And somebody who was criticized when she was first cast. And people were losing their minds of when she was cast as Wonder Woman. And, it was the same thing with Ben Affleck, though. When he was cast as Batman, people were up in arms about it. I think he's worse in this movie than Batman v Superman, because he was the best part of that movie, and it's like he took a step back. But yeah, you said it before. The casting is unbelievable.
It's really good.
There's some home runs with the casting.
And that's I think one of the frustrating things as this film starts going, because at the beginning there's the opening scene that's not great, but it's really once you get about 3/4 of the way into this movie that everything just really falls apart. Sadly, it reminds me of another Ben Affleck superhero movie in Daredevil that kind of starts off with some promise, some wonkiness for sure, but definitely falls apart on the back end of it and just becomes, I don't want to say unwatchable, because I don't actually think this movie is unwatchable. We're not in that territory, and it's not even so good it's bad laugh at it like a Batman and Robin is. It could have been so much more than it was, and it's frustrating because it should have been better.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the best words to describe it, is frustrating, because it should have been better. And one of the things where, you said, oh, it's not Batman and Robin, it's not Batman and Robin bad. To me, it's not worse in the fact that it's a worse movie. It's worse in the fact that it should have been better, because at least Batman and Robin now, it's kind of refreshing to hear everybody talk about that movie and just openly say, it sucks. We know it sucks. We're sorry. Like,
Yeah.
we're sorry if we made you hate Batman for 15 years. With this movie, though, again, you have somebody who at the time, again, let's not even get into everything that's now being said about, Joss Whedon and everything like that. But you had a guy who did the Avengers, who, some missteps with the Age of Ultron, but he had very good runs with TV shows. For me, he did the movie The Cabin in the Woods, which, as a horror movie fan, I thought was fantastic. He's had really good runs, and he's shown that he can do, successful team-up movies and things like that. But this one isn't, like you said, it's not you watch it and it's so bad that it's good, so you appreciate it. You go back and watch it and you're like, what in the hell actually happened? Like, what are some of these decisions? And one of them, for me too, one of these decisions is Batman in this movie. Again, regardless of, and some of this might be because he did try to follow off of it, but his turn on Superman and Batman v Superman of, oh my God, we have the same name. Like, he's so adamant that he always uses percentages, and that's actually one thing that makes me laugh. If there's even a fraction of a chance that he's our enemy, we have to take it as an absolute certain, because if he turns into our enemy, we can't stop him. So we can never let it get to that point. Just because you have the same, mom's name does not change what he thought about the possibility of Superman being able to wipe out the planet. Him too, he just seems to be a complete 180 from Batman v Superman without any explanation. And backtracking for me, the scene where he tracks down the thug who's stealing, God, it's like he's got a knapsack of like China. Like the guy's like, it sounds like plates in the bag.
Seems a little bit below Batman's,
right.
his lane.
But he's going to use him, to draw out, we find a parademon, because they, strive on fear, which again seems like a plot convenience because there's fear throughout the entire movie, but we don't see these guys. But after the parademon explodes, like Batman's just standing there chilling with this thug, and he's like, oh, it's because he's gone, right? That's why they're coming here. He cares about Superman. Like, he knows that these parademons, like, everybody's aware that all of a sudden the world's in turmoil because Superman's dead, even though, guess what? In this universe, Superman was doing crap for years. Like, he was saving an oil rig here and there with his shirt off, but nobody knew what was going on.
He really hadn't been on the job very long, and the Batman we're presented with, we're expected to believe. I even wanted to say Alfred has a line in here that he's been on patrol 20 years or so. I think is mentioned at some point. So Batman in this continuity is an established hero, whereas Superman kind of showed up about an hour and a half ago, did one or two things, and then he died. So. Yeah, it does feel really weird. It feels like a plot convenience. It feels like lazy writing, really, is what it is. The other thing that is just so obvious, all the marketing up to this movie, you saw all the other characters, but you never saw Superman included in it. You didn't see him in any of the promotional shots. You don't see him in most of the posters or the other things that kind of were out promoting this, all the fast food tie-ins or whatever. Did anybody really think they weren't going to find a way to resurrect Superman? Like, to me, that was just like you're going to do a Justice League movie and not resurrect Superman. Like, I just didn't believe it for 1 second. I honestly, like, it angered me a little bit because it's like, you're not giving me the cinema fan like any credit for knowing what you're doing. Like, just kind of tell me that we're doing that.
it felt like they were trying to hook you in to be like, oh, go see the movie to see if he comes back. But any real fan would know that he is. And by the way the movie, like even the casual fan, I feel would have been able to just be like, well, there's no way he's not in this. So it's like they use it as a hook, but it was more to me insulting that you just left him out of every single promotional material, because maybe that drew away some people that were like, oh, well, what's like, oh, he's really not going to be in this. And, maybe it's a small percentage, but I feel like the way that they tried to market it could have actually drew people away instead of bringing them in. Like the hook wasn't there.
Yeah, absolutely not. And like I said, I think it's just kind of insulting to us, the viewer, that you didn't like kind of just embrace the fact that that was part of it. As we go through this film, one of the things that is clear to me and very obvious, this movie is dark and depressing for really no other reason than just to be dark and depressing. Some of the things they're trying to get us to feel an emotion around, or try to, insinuate, oh, terrible things are happening, you should feel a certain way about this. There's all of this darkness, but it hasn't earned the right for it to matter to us. Mm-hmm. If you think about it, sure, this is really the third film. So we have Man of Steel, followed by, Batman v Superman. And then we roll right into this, which was kind of a gamble to not have these other characters really set up well the way that we got in the Marvel, cinematic universe. So it was really a risk, but it was okay. It felt rushed to me, certainly, but none of the things that we were supposed to actually care about, it just really mattered. It just felt like it was trying to say, "Ooh, everything is dark and gloomy," and we, the audience, just don't really care about it, and it didn't pay off well for me.
Yeah, that's, it's a lot of sometimes what seems like lazy writing. There's situations that you're supposed to care about, but why would you? Because again, this team has not been together. Even Bruce and Diana's relationship, you're led to believe that not, from like an attraction standpoint, but you're led to believe that there's something there. But again, there's no in between. You go from Batman v Superman, where she joins the fight, but you don't see them like have any sort of interaction in between the two movies, or why they would be so close. Like, again, it's just like, I don't know. It's like when you're a kid and you're like, oh my God, you like Pepsi? I like Pepsi. Let's be friends. Like, yeah. I just felt like not being able to really show this team coming together or meeting beforehand, and just, his montage of going and getting people and then, bringing the team together. And Rob, obviously you're going to correct me here if I'm wrong, but I think when we first talked about this movie, you said one bright spot for you was the Flash. And I've heard that from a lot of people, but I'm somebody who really did not like him. I do not think his humor landed at all for me. It's very out of place, but I think I remember you saying you liked him when we first discussed this movie years back.
So on rewatch, some of his moments, some of his bits work really well, and some fall completely flat. And I think that's where you wonder how much of this was edited in, because you've heard that the original film was super dark and they were trying to add some levity. Certainly we've seen the success with the MCU and it's lighter toned in some points. So you wonder how much of that was studio meddling to try to make it lighter. I think we heard that was true with Suicide Squad as well, that there was a lot of reshoots for that to try to add some levity to it. And by the way, Suicide Squad was actually kind of fun. It's not my favorite movie ever, but I actually like it better than most people. I like it better than this movie. And I wish that movie would have had the parademons instead of the putties that we got.
It was supposed to introduce the parademons.
And it would have maybe made more sense, if all of this was related. Actually, now that I'm thinking about it, was Justice League was after Suicide Squad. I think I had my timeline wrong earlier. So I got to correct myself there. but there were definitely parts of the Flash, adding a little bit of levity that did land, and some of it for me just it didn't work. It felt out of place. It landed flat on its face, and I guess really more than anything, you have to tell me whether or not that's the interpretation of Barry Allen that you want, because that's not really his character in the comics. I mean, he certainly has moments that are quite funny and are quite humorous, but he's also dealing with a lot of serious stuff too. I mean, certainly a lot of the stuff with Reverse Flash, and you start thinking about all the way he bends time and space around him, and it gets to be some pretty heavy stuff. I'm not necessarily sure this was the version of Barry Allen that I wanted. And some of it, especially when it lands flat, it makes it harder to appreciate the stuff that actually was funny.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a comic book fan and you've seen things from Flash, or if you watch the CW show, The Flash, which had some strong seasons and it's had some bad seasons, but, Barry isn't somebody, there's a line in this movie where he's like, oh, it's really cool that you guys are all ready to do battle, but I've never done battle. I've pushed people and ran away. That's not Barry Allen. Barry Allen is in the battle. So yeah, there's some parts that actually are entertaining to me about him. When they first go to the Batcave and he's just kind of like this kid who's starstruck by the fact that, holy cow, like this guy actually exists, and like look at all this stuff he has. That landed for me. But one scene that's just cringeworthy to me is when, and this is jumping forward and we'll obviously go back, but when they're in the hangar and the lasso of truth is underneath Aquaman, which, how did it even get there and he didn't notice it? But it leads to the scene where, which was kind of funny, where he's talking about, oh, I don't want to die. And then he goes to Wonder Woman. He's like, whew, you're gorgeous. I don't care that we used to fight. Like that had nothing to do with me. But then when he goes by Barry and he says, you tell anybody about this, you'll meet every piranha I know. And he's like, I didn't hear anything after we're all going to die. Like, really? You didn't hear the last 2.5 minutes of that conversation? You blanked out? Like, to me, that stuff doesn't land. It made him seem stupid. Like,
yeah, I actually thought that whole bit with Jason Momoa, first of all, I think he's fantastic as Aquaman. I think that's been him as Aquaman is one of the best castings that we've seen. I'm going to just go ahead and say in almost any superhero film. I mean, he's probably not as good as RDJ, as Tony Stark. I mean, that to me is probably the apex, just the perfect alignment. I guess I got to say Patrick Stewart is Charles Xavier. That's it. That's the one. And then you get RDJ, but Jason Momoa as Aquaman has taken a character that is not at all popular in comics. In fact, gets made fun of a lot because he talks to fish and his powers are stupid. A lot of people bag on Aquaman, but Jason Momoa has made that character cool.
He's a guy who oozes charisma in this role. Like he really does. He owns the screen. He's got a great presence.
I mean, and his solo film is fantastic. I really enjoy it. I think it's really a high point of the DC extended universe so far. I actually liked that scene. I thought he was really funny at that moment. And as they're getting ready to go into a fairly serious battle, I thought it was kind of interesting to get that moment. But, to have a superhero be an outright coward just didn't work. It was kind of funny in the moment, but you just go, ugh. It's yes, it is. It's a line played for a laugh, but it's still kind of an ugh for me.
Yeah. One character that we have not talked about yet is Cyborg. And we certainly mentioned very briefly what's going on with the actor that has played Cyborg. But we've heard that Cyborg is the heart and soul of Snyder's version of this movie. And he's really regulated here. But, some of the things with Cyborg in this movie that are strange to me is, again, like lazy writing. There's a scene where he's upstairs in an apartment, or if it's where he lives with his dad, it's never really like made known. He starts talking about why he doesn't go anywhere, and I can't remember the exact line, but he's like, oh, you wouldn't want them to see the monster. And his dad says, "You're not a monster, Victor." And he's like, "Oh, funny that you thought I was talking about me." And it's like, everything you just said indicates that you're talking about you. Like, there's no surprise there. There's no question. You literally were just describing yourself, and it's lazy writing.
There's a lot of lazy writing with Victor's character that make me, it's a lot of creating conflict for the sake of there being conflict. There's really no reason for it. It's just his general melancholy. He's walking around all pissed for really no reason. Like he lost his mother, but his dad did some incredibly illegal stuff and took huge risks to try to save his life in the only way that he knew how. And it seems like Victor's, it's almost like, I didn't ask to be born, or it's kind of like that teenage argument. Like, I didn't ask you to save me. Like, dude, you've got a chance at life. Like, your father took incredible risk. And it just seems like very lazy writing that we're supposed to believe there's this conflict between him and his dad. And then there's this conflict between him and wanting to be a part of this and join the team and not really wanting to embrace, go ahead and call it the gifts that he has now. Certainly he looks very different. He doesn't function as a normal human being anymore because he's a cyborg. But at the same time, there's other things that he's capable of doing, and he seems so resistant to embrace all of those things. And it just doesn't, like, if you just stop and ask yourself why, you don't have a reason. Like, there's nothing that sets up why there's this conflict except lazy writing.
Yeah, I mean, geez, we haven't even gotten into the villain of this movie yet. Steppenwolf.
His CG is so bad.
Yeah.
In some parts, it's terrible.
It's terrible. And again, there's some lazy writing with him as well. There's one particular line where he's looking for the mother boxes, and he says the line of, "Mother, I see now why you waited so long to wake me. Like, the Kryptonian's death put this world into such darkness." And again, it's like, this guy was not around. Like, he was not around for long enough for this world to just be like, there's no hope anymore. Superman's gone. Like, it doesn't make sense. And he can conveniently finds the mother box in Atlantis. He has no problem. He just beams down and it's there. But yet, when he's questioning the workers for Star Labs, and he's like, "You have the smell of the mother box all over you. You don't know where that one, like, can you find them or not?" Like,
there's just a lot of really lazy writing. There's a lot of things that are not set up well, and just things that when you have to start asking one or two questions and you don't actually understand the answer, I think it tells you why this movie wasn't received the way that it could have been. And again, the setup, there's so many great pieces in place that it does make me curious how much of this was Whedon's interference and how much of this was the original screenplay. How much of this was adapted? How much did we keep? We certainly know there's elements, obviously the return of Superman. We know that we're going to get him in his black costume, which was not used at all, which seems strange to me. Why would you not use that? Like,
you see it. There's a glimpse of it when he first goes into the ship. There's a pod that actually, no, it's not even in the theatrical cut. It was a deleted scene when the movie was released on Blu-ray.
Oh, I've not seen those. I've just seen my recent rewatch was done on HBO Max, so it's I wouldn't had a chance to peep those. But it just there is so many parts of this that it just seems like they introduce an idea or they put out a piece of dialogue or they show you a scene, and you're not supposed to just question it. You're just supposed to accept it and just kind of let the movie move on from there. Especially this. There's the part where they show the flashback, and it's got, all of these different armies coming together to stop Steppenwolf. And you have, the Atlanteans, you have the Amazons, you have the world of men. And you're supposed to not understand that was blatantly ripped off from Lord of the Rings. Like that's definitely, part of the Hobbit, I think,
Mm-hmm.
Like it really, and it was better done in the Hobbit than it was done here. And then they tease us, they show us a Green Lantern, and then that's all the more we get of it. And what was really cool is I love the fact that they showed, one of them got killed in battle, and then the ring immediately took off to find its new host. I did kind of like that nod. But I would certainly love to see an on-screen Green Lantern that as a good movie, not the one we got. That would be really cool. Although I'm kind of glad they didn't with this, because they already tried to do too much. They already tried to introduce too many new characters, and most of it didn't work as well as what it could have. Even little things like they showed us a different version throughout the DCEU. We get a different version of Alfred than what we've ever seen before. Normally Alfred is kindly older gentleman, very caring. We've seen some different ones that are pretty good. Michael Crane was good in the comics. Typically he's portrayed as kind of the loving adoptive father, and you really get that father-son love relationship between the two of them, while also serving as kind of mission control. Here, he's just, mission control and a trusted advisor and friend. And it's an interesting take. And Jeremy Irons is fantastic in it. And I love his line when they're talking about trying to recruit Wonder Woman. Will you be Bruce's teammate? Yes or no?
Right.
There's little bits like that are actually really funny and are set up well. That it makes you realize this movie could have been so much more.
Yeah, he's a really good part of both Batman v Superman and this movie. He has some really good lines, and it's more so he's a lot more direct in these movies with Bruce. Like he calls him out a ton, especially in Batman v Superman on his crap sometimes. So he's a really good part of this movie, and I do like how he talks to Bruce when they're talking about resurrecting Superman. I like how he sits there and says, but what does Clark need?
Right.
Maybe he's at peace, and you shouldn't bother that. I like that a lot. I actually think that's one of a very good moment in this movie, which for me is few and far in between. But let's talk about the fact that they're going to when they sit there and figure out, again, Bruce goes into his calculations with, if there's a fraction of a chance we can bring them back, we have to do it. We have to use the mother box to do it. And then there's more manufactured conflict between him and Diana, where she talks about, oh, I was there and you didn't kill Superman, and why do we have to bring him back? Because of your guilt. And then she immediately, it's like a weird transition. There was supposed to be more in that scene where she goes, why do we have to bring him back? Because of your guilt. And she makes this cringe-worthy face and is like, ugh, I was there, Bruce. You didn't kill Superman. It's a weird transition cut where it seemed like there should have been more dialogue there, but there wasn't.
Well, we're going to have 4 hours of the Snyder cut.
Right.
So, it's twice the length of this movie. There could have been a whole half-hour scene in there. I'll be curious. That'll be a scene that I'll be curious to revisit for sure, to see, what actually happened. But it's just another example of lazy writing in the theatrical version of what we got. Is there's conflict for the sake of conflict, and then it just resolves itself without really the audience understanding why the person who changed their mind did so. I don't think it's well explained. She kind of does explain it a little bit, but it's just listen, she felt very, very strongly about this idea on one end of it, and then just kind of flipped. And the resurrection scene in general is just kind of okay, so why does he have to touch it at the exact moment? Is how much of the mother box needs to be in the water? Is it just 1 micron? Is it an inch? What's the actual amount that it needs to be here? And then of course, Superman explodes out, and you get that whole bit where he's, trying to choke Bruce, and you worry that maybe he's going to be, kind of Frankenstein's monster, where he's reincarnated and brought back from the dead. And you get just the worst of all of the digital mustache removals is in this scene.
It's such a close-up, too.
Bad. Like, if you're going to do it, like, at least pull the shot back so it's hidden a little bit, you know, shoot most of it from over his shoulder so that you're getting just the reaction, you know. There's so many ways they could have tried to hide it better. And it almost feels like Whedon just kind of sat down in the editing room and is like, well, it's the best it's going to be here, guys. Like, it almost feels like at times like they just gave up. Like, that's the best it's going to be. Like, here's what you get. But the worst of the digital stash removals is in this scene here.
Yeah. Again, I feel like this scene here is more of conflict for conflict because I don't know, you know, Superman dies fighting with Bruce and Wonder Woman. And he doesn't know Diana. He just knows that she's there at the end of Batman v Superman. So, okay, but your life ended fighting with Batman. You guys had made amends. To me, again, it's just like you wake up. Again, I know there's a line from Aquaman that's like, you know, you lose part of yourself, maybe your soul. But again, it's like just kind of ham-fisted in there for me. Because really, why do you have a problem with Bruce when you woke back up? Like, I remember you, and you come after him, and you're like, do you bleed? And we just talked about it. Just you have to show a close-up of his face, which looks terrible. But also, too, I guess nobody in this universe cares about secret identities because there's two cops in this scene, and they're just openly calling him Clark. Like, and I know, but, you know, so I guess whatever. But everybody was so secretive about it in the beginning, like when Lois and his mom are talking, and at the end, he's wearing the glasses again, like he's got to have a disguise on. But you just openly talked about this guy with people around you. There's one good part about that scene, though, and that's a flash. I do like that where he's starting to try and run into the fight, and you just see Soups turn his head like he's on par with him for speed, and you just see that look on Barry's face like, wait.
I'm not used to this. This
right,
has never
like,
happened before.
Like, that's good. I like that.
Yeah, it's kind of some bad CG, but the menacing look that we get from Superman, that was really cool and very impactful. I do like that aspect of it. And then what gets weird to me is, so he pieces out of there and he ends up in Smallville. And holy crap, Martha Kent made it to Smallville fast in her truck, right? Because she was just in Metropolis not that long ago. She got there like at warp speed. Like, was Barry pushing the truck to get her back there?
She's got that Fast and Furious vehicle.
Yeah. And you get some bad, and I don't know if it's just bad lighting or bad CG, but this scene, the lighting just is off. It doesn't look real. They're in a cornfield, maybe. Like, there's just something about this that seems off. And it's kind of a bummer because I really like Amy Adams, and I would like to see her return as Lois Lane. I don't know for sure if that's going to happen or not at this point. There was, talk that yes, she was, and then no, she wasn't, and maybe, and we don't know if now there's even talk that they're rebooting Superman possibly with Michael B. Jordan in the title role, and maybe it's connected to the DCEU, maybe it's its own separate thing, like how the Robert Pattinson Batman is different. Like, the DC universe is kind of a mess. Like, we just want this all to make sense. We want, as fans, these movies to have an understanding and have it make sense. At the same time, we want good movies. We want just interesting things to watch and be happy about in our superhero movies to be good. But I want them to make sense.
Well, they keep flip-flopping on what they say they're going to do. So at first it was, okay, everything is connected. And then this movie came out, and it really, like, this is the movie where they talked about this derailed the DCEU's plans for a shared universe. And they were like, well, now we're just going to focus on individual movies. And you had Shazam, which I enjoyed.
Yep.
And you had Aquaman, which I did enjoy. I thought there were some issues with it. But again, I enjoyed it. And it was like, well, this is what we're going to do. We're going to focus on individual stories, and maybe eventually down the line, we're going to bring things together, but these can truly act as standalone movies. Then the Snyder Cut is announced and it's going to be released. And then you hear maybe, well, this might bring Snyder back. and he might get to finish his vision with Justice League Part 2. And then we have Robert Pattinson's Batman that's not supposed to, it's supposed to be its own thing. But then we hear Ben Affleck is going to come back as Batman, and, he's going to be in Flashpoint. And they just keep going back and forth on whether or not this is going to be a multiverse now, whether it's individual movies. And you just have to say, well, this Batman they're just doing this movie because they don't know. They're back to the point of they don't know what they want to do with their own movie universe. And to the casual person, and again, we've talked about on other shows where theaters are dead.
Yeah.
But to the casual person, you're probably pushing some people away because they're like, I don't know what this is. I don't know what I'm supposed to be, so wait a minute. Why is this guy, like, I even had somebody go, so wait a minute, why is the Twilight guy Batman, but Ben Affleck is, like, casual people don't know what's going on here.
It's sometimes hard for super fans of this genre like you and I to really be able to understand how, and I don't want to say this in a disparaging way. When I say the word casual fan, I definitely don't mean that in a disparaging way. I think one of the great things about fandom is the ability to embrace the things that make you happy.
Yeah.
Like for me, I'm not somebody who's really into Harry Potter. It's never done anything for me, but I don't look down on anybody who loves Harry Potter. Like, embrace the things that make you happy. We've got a lot of things in our world that are challenging and not fun.
Well, you look down on a lot of people. You're like 7'9".
Right. So that's right. That's but I don't do it intentionally. I don't look down on people because of their preferences in film, like whatever you like. But so when I say casual fan, please, listeners, don't take that as, I'm looking down on people at all. But so to understand the perspective of your casual moviegoer who just wants to throw popcorn in their face and have a good time at the movies, like, sometimes I have to take a step back and realize that not everybody's like following the news on this stuff and texting stories back and forth with their friends like you and I do when something new develops. And we're paying attention to this stuff, and we can separate, okay, so the Pattinson movie takes place in this kind of universe. It's its own thing. The Joker movie is its own thing. And then the DCEU is its own thing. But then there's these other things that are mostly connected, kind of, sort of. They branch off a bit. They're supposed to take place. Like, we can sort of keep track of that, but it's kind of a mess. And like I said, I just really want these things to make, it's frustrating when these things don't make sense. And I think for the studio, they're going to be further ahead. Certainly they're trying to cash in on what Marvel was able to do and what Disney was able to do with their Marvel properties and have, just these movies that make all of the money. But there's been so many missteps, and you wonder what would have happened had Snyder not had the terrible tragedy that happened in his life. If he would have stayed with this project all the way through, what would this film actually have looked like? And the fact that he's coming back to it now, the thing that's very interesting to me is, will this film be considerably darker? Now, obviously, we know Snyder is kind of a dark director. That's sort of his thing. But coming back to a movie that he left before he could finish it for terrible, tragic reasons, will that make this movie even darker? Certainly, we've seen when filmmakers are in dark places in their lives, it has an effect on their work. Most notably, George Lucas and Steven Spielberg talked about both of them were in bad places with their relationships, not with each other, but with their without other people when they made Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom. And that's a very dark movie when you go back to it. The whole Kalima, and he's yanking the dude's heart out of his chest. Like, that's not a movie you sit down and watch with your kids. Will that have the same effect here? Will he look at some of the lightheartedness that was attempted to be added to this that didn't really work, that didn't save the movie, and pull it all out and just make it even darker? I think a lot of what Warner is going to try to do, and their parent company of AT&T and HBO Max and all of the other things that they're putting together for DC, I think a lot of the future of these films is going to rest on the fan reaction to the Snyder Cut. I think that if it is well received, if people start, subscribing to HBO Max in droves, and there's a lot of buzz of the fan community around this, you might see them decide that they're going to kind of retcon out the theatrical version and go with this one.
Yeah, I mean, look, fan reaction is why we have the Snyder Cut in the first place. So again, if this movie is good, there's a real shot here that fan reaction could force them to recalculate again, which is also kind of tricky though. Because you've flip-flopped, like we talked about so many times now, on what this universe is supposed to be. How much market do you capture if you decide again to go, well, we have to change the plan again, and we're going to go here because with the Snyder Cut, Wonder Woman 84. We've both watched that, and we both have some strong opinions about Wonder Woman 84, and a lot of people do.
Yep.
The way that Diana is in Justice League does not line up with how she ends up in 84.
Nope.
So there's a lot of issues even in this where it's supposed to be connected, where these characters don't line up. So is that even further pushed apart by a Snyder Cut? And how do they maybe try to tighten some of that up if they go in this direction? Which will be an interesting concept. But, back to this movie, we get Superman being resurrected, and they conveniently forget about the mother box just laying there. The thing that they've been trying to protect the whole movie, they're just like, oh, it's over there in the field. We're good. Because everybody had to go, after Superman, but, except for Bruce, who came in a little bit later because he had to make sure to go get Lois as his backup plan and all the other nonsense that came with that.
Didn't have the armored suit on either, by the way, which would have made sense.
But you completely just ignore this thing that you're like, we have to make sure Steppenwolf doesn't get these mother boxes, but whatever. So yeah, Superman goes on the fate of the world is at stake here. But he goes on his little hiatus to go see Lois and go see his mother and casually change his clothes. He's got time for that. But
they just went and got an extra suit somewhere.
Right, exactly. So you get him resurrected, and we get to, the final scene, which is, oh boy, the hangar scene coming out of the water is really bad when you go back and look at it. There's a lot of digital effects that you can just see, shining through, I'm saying, not shining in a good way. But you go to this random family that got plugged into the movie that why don't the parademons just bust through that house? Like, that was another really weird scene in this movie. Just this weird random family who, again, seems placed in there for no real reason. There's no connection to them. You have no reason to care about them other than you're supposed to care about another human being. But they're shoehorned into the movie. And yeah, I don't know. This ending fight scene, none of the battles in this movie are particularly good to me. They're just not. And this is another one. Like, you can't even end your movie on a good fight scene.
We should be excited to see, especially at the age that we're at with digital effects and CG and motion capture. And you think about some of the awesome. So thinking about even a film that Joss Whedon was involved in, thinking about when Tony and Thor and Cap all meet for the first time, in that setting, and Hulk is all involved. And there's that fight between all of them in the Avengers film towards the beginning of it before they really team up. And you think about how good that is. And you think about just how good that looks. And then you think about what we get here, and it's so frustrating. There's no emotional weight. Superman shows up, right? It's the most obvious Deus Ex Machina device ever. It's just, he shows up because of course he is, because he hasn't shown up yet, and everything looks like it all is to be lost, and he shows right up at that point. Well, because of course he does. And then you get kind of the hyenas on Scar moment where the parademons turn on Steppenwolf, and it's terrible. I wanted something completely different than that. There's no stakes that really feel like they matter. Like, you get to the end of this, and the movie really stops making sense at all about 3/4 of the way into this. And it's just kind of like they're just feeding you scene after scene after scene and just hoping you go with it and not ask questions about it. And it's what's so frustrating is that, and again, we're using that word because that's the most accurate way to describe this. You think about superheroes in general, the most iconic, most popular superheroes, the ones that everybody knows. So if you put up a logo in front of people from the United States, from India, from Africa, from Poland, from anywhere in the world you want to do, and you ask people to recognize logos, people will recognize Superman. People will recognize Batman. People will recognize Wonder Woman. These characters matter. These are important characters, and we got great casting for all of them. As I mentioned, Aquaman, not exactly a top tier character prior to Jason Momoa coming in. I mean, people sort of made fun of him, but he is fantastic in this role. I think Ezra Miller works in some points and doesn't work in other points, but we get some great casting. We have some great setups, and these iconic characters are just wasted in this. We don't really get interesting ways of them using their abilities and fighting together in ways that are compelling. It's such a frustrating waste.
Yeah. You have to, when Superman comes in and Steppenwolf says, none of you can understand the truth. And well, I'm a believer in truth, but I'm also a big fan of justice. Like,
cringe.
Okay.
Massive cringe.
Like, you have that cringe scene. Again, why would there not be a fail safe to the parademons being not to turn on Steppenwolf? That just seemed weird because, again, they have no problem going and attacking him. I understand he's out in the open, but you're telling me at that moment Steppenwolf was more afraid than this random family
who has no powers or abilities at all whatsoever.
And the parademons didn't just lunge and attack them. Like, again, you just, at the end of this movie, everything is thrown together. Nothing really makes sense. And then when they beat them, it's like the world from Avatar from James Cameron comes to life in this city. Like all of these weird, bright, beautiful flowers just start blossoming, and this ending falls apart. Everything gets thrown together. You also get, again, it doesn't even look real at the end when Clark and Bruce are standing there at the Kent farm. You look at that background shot from them, nothing looks real at all. It's like you couldn't even, it literally looks like they green screened that. Like you couldn't film on a real location.
Yeah, it really does look terrible. I mean, it's either the worst lit shot or it's a terrible green screen for reasons you don't need a green screen for a farm. Like you really don't.
I bought the bank. You couldn't just buy back the house. Like you couldn't just win the house on an auction. Like you had to buy the bank. Like again, like
I mean, I actually laughed at that scene, and I also laughed at the scene when Flash gets in his car and he says, "What's your superpower?" and he says, "I'm rich." I do find that funny. Like, those parts are kind of funny to me. And then if we want to jump ahead just a little bit further, we get a post-credits scene that is also, to me, incredibly frustrating because, holy cow, does Joe Manganiello look perfect as Deathstroke.
Perfect.
I mean, the costume is perfect.
Off the page to the screen.
Perfect. And when he takes the helmet off, he looks perfect. And he's a very good actor. I really get frustrated that we might not get a payoff on that. Like just as
that was added in too. That was not the original end credit scene. That was completely shot new.
And that's again one of the frustrating things. Like, look, I don't really like Jesse Eisenberg as Lex Luthor. I don't really like that take on the character. I mean, you don't have to do the same way we've seen Lex. You know, it doesn't have to be, you know, that version every time. I mean, certainly we've seen multiple interpretations of the Joker. Each one has been something a little bit interesting and unique and different. Not a big fan, by the way, of Jared Leto's interpretation of it. It just kind of, it's weird and creepy and not really in a scary way, just in a creepy way. Like, somebody just needs to smack this guy around a little bit. Like, I don't fear him the way I do like Heath Ledger's interpretation or Jack Nicholson's interpretation. And certainly the interpretation we get in the Arkham games is presented by Mark Hamill. You know, his version is great.
Yeah.
So I don't necessarily need the brooding, bald, megalomaniac genius Lex Luthor every time, but
it's like this guy was on a sugar high. Like, his mannerisms were like he had too much caffeine every minute of the day.
Yeah, it reads more that he's not a genius megalomaniac, and it almost reads more like he's got some kind of disorder, you know, that, and not to make light of people with disorders, but like it doesn't read well. But, you know, the idea of introducing, you know, the Legion of Doom, wow, that could have been cool. And we've already got introductions of most of those characters throughout some of these films. You know, if we could just get Sinestro in a proper Green Lantern movie, you know, that could be a lot of fun. But again, if the Snyder Cut doesn't do well, if it's not well received, it's unlikely we will see any of that, I think.
Yeah, no, a lot, I think. Obviously, we know we're getting, you know, the Robert Pattinson, the Batman movie. We know that we are getting another Aquaman. We know we're getting another Shazam. We know we're getting Black Adam. But I really think the Snyder Cut reaction will dictate what actually happens in those movies. And not saying it'll completely change it, but if the Snyder Cut is well received, I do think there's we need to find a way to make these maybe more connected than what they are. So this is going to be really interesting to see. We're close. March 18th, the Snyder Cut comes out. You have to have the day off to really take this in, because again, like we've talked about, this is 4 hours. This is not a movie that for listeners of the show, Rob and I, we don't work the same schedule, but we work the same hours. So we have specific shifts for the company that we work for. This is not something, Rob, where if we work a 9 to 6 shift, I want to come home and watch and watch this.
No, you got to take a whole day off for this one.
I need the day off to sit here and watch this. And
because you got to have a meal break in the middle. You're probably gonna have to go to the bathroom a couple of times. I mean, it's 4 hours. I mean, it's kind of daunting. I mean,
is this the longest movie ever?
It's close to it. I mean, Titanic was 3, I think. There's the movie Gettysburg that was the adaptation of the novel The Killer Angels that was actually quite long as well. I think that one was maybe 3.5.
Endgame was 3 hours and like 10 minutes.
Yeah.
Lincoln was 3 hours, but I don't ever remember a movie being 4 hours long.
Yeah,
and
we're not
talking
release this theatrically.
We're not talking it's 4 hours because we're counting 30 minutes of credits. Like, we're talking, we have 4 hours of on-screen film, which is, it's going to be interesting because regardless of whether or not maybe this is good, does 4 hours, again, when we talk about somebody who maybe isn't a super fan, is 4 hours just too much?
I think a lot of people will pause this and come back to it. I know you won't be one of them. You'll be sitting on your couch with the dog, and you will be just, you'll have the surround sound cranked up. You're locked in.
My phone's on silent. This is it. Like, this is this
the
4
shades
hours
are drawn,
is dedicated.
To this is set aside. You might have pizza delivery scheduled, so you don't have to get up much, to even prepare food for yourself. Although the interesting thing about the Snyder Cut is there might be more people like you than we realize, because that's why this is being made. That's why, is because the internet kind of demanded it. Zack Snyder certainly put it out there like, hey, I've got this thing.
This isn't 100 fans. that are like, I want to see, like, you're not getting a $60 million reprieve to finish your movie because 100 people said, you better give us the Snyder cut. Like, no, this is a pretty good swelling of support to see this. And I think some of it too just boils down to, regardless of what you thought about his other movies, because again, we didn't really like Batman v Superman. I thought Man of Steel had its moments. It was okay.
We both liked Watchmen.
Yeah, this is...
I think I like Sucker Punch better than you did, just thinking of Zack Snyder films in general.
Yeah. You know, this is also for me just, I want to see what the vision was. And regardless of it, if it's bad, I'll be happy to have seen this. Because I really just want to see what the vision was.
And honestly, not only will we get that, but we'll get kind of a corrected version of it too, because he has the ability to use the feedback that was given, 3 years of time to think about how he would have done it differently, and maybe stuff that he would have incorporated into the theatrical version if he was able to see it through the whole way, maybe gets edited out.
Yeah, I think, one thing that I didn't mention, and we're closing up this episode here, one fantastic thing is Danny Elfman gets to they use that score for Batman when he's standing there before they meet Gordon. That's a quick little thing, but man, I got goosebumps hearing that. I was like, okay, this is what I wanted. That's one thing. He looks great as Batman. He still does.
The music, the little nod to that is fantastic. And I believe we get a little bit of the Superman theme too.
Yes.
But having those elements introduced are certainly good. And while we're on the subject of music, using White Stripes' Icky Thump is great. And having Gary Clark Jr. cover Come Together in his version of it, it's one of my all-time favorite covers out there, because it takes the inspiration of what was cool about the original song, but the artist plays it his way. And I'm a big fan of Gary Clark Jr. in general. And I love that he, just gave us this ballsy, fantastic, swaggering version of Come Together to end the film on, before we get the really cool post-credit scene that's frustrating as hell because it may not pay off ever.
Yeah. You get the post-credit scene of Superman and Flash doing a race. That was cool, but again, you never know what the payoff is going to be. But with Justice League, I'm going to go ahead and say, and I have this on my Letterboxd account as a movie that I reviewed. For fans that know what Letterboxd is, it's where you can just click on every single movie that you've ever seen, leave a review, or just rate it stars and everything like that. I have this rated as 1.5 stars on my Letterboxd account out of 5, which would translate to 1.5 reels on Matt Goes to the Movies. So I really don't like this movie, which is weird because, like I said, I've seen it 6 times.
You've seen it more times and you dislike it more than I do.
Right. So, Rob, what is your rating here for Justice League as we're finishing up?
So, like I mentioned before, this is not Logan. This is not Endgame. This is not any of the great films. This is not X-Men First Class. This is not Deadpool. None of the great films within the superhero genre. This is not the Christopher Nolan trilogy.
But it's not Catwoman.
It's not Catwoman.
It's not Elektra.
It's not Elektra. It's not Daredevil. It's not Thor: The Dark World. It's not as bad as the film that came before it. This to me is 2.5. It's not good. It could have been good. It's not laughably bad like Batman and Robin. It's kind of just exists in that, we're almost at the point where we're expecting too much out of our superhero films because we've seen them be really good. And this one just kind of felt rushed at different points. It felt like there just wasn't explanations given. We're just supposed to go with it. And that's as a fan of good film, it's hard to accept, but it's not as bad as what a lot of fans talk about this movie as. I mean, again, it's not good. For me, 2.5 reels.
All right. Well, listeners, again, another episode of Matt Goes to the Movie for Justice League. Regardless of how I feel about this movie, I had a lot of fun doing this episode, and I'm going to look really, really forward to doing the Snyder Cut of Justice League, which Rob will join me for, because it's going to be incredibly interesting to see what happens here with this movie. So we've got that coming down the pipeline. And we actually did something today, which I have to really thank Rob for. If you're listening to this episode, the 1-year anniversary of Matt Goes to the Movies is coming up. And we did a first time ever video to talk about things that are coming in March and, coming, to future episodes. One of those is going to be the Snyder Cut of Justice League. We're doing Kong vs. Godzilla. If you've listened to Mondays with Maximoff, we have the season finale of WandaVision that we're doing as well. We're going to get into Falcon and the Winter Soldier, which Harrison from the Basement Binge will join Rob and I again for. So a lot of stuff to look forward to. You're going to see all the show notes here. So again, shout out to Rob for helping me with this episode, helping me record this first ever Matt Goes to the Movies video that you're going to be seeing, and looking forward to a lot of great things. Listeners, plug the email and send us your thoughts on this review, on movies, what you maybe want to see from us. If there's a movie that you think you like or you don't like and you'd like to hear our opinion on it, number one, that's awesome. I never thought I'd even have listeners to this thing. I just did it because I was sitting at home bored from COVID, and our job was closed for 2 months. And I said, well, let me just record my thoughts. So we love to hear what you think about these reviews and about these movies. It's a lot of fun. That email address is mgttmpodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's going to be in the show notes. We have the official Facebook page, Instagram page. We're on YouTube. We do video clips to promote shows on TikTok, which is also Matt Goes to the Movies.
Matt will not be dancing, though, unfortunately, on TikTok.
Yeah, no. Not only do I have 2 left feet, but I still can't. I can't bring myself to do that. But there's a lot of ways to interact with the channel, which we really appreciate. So thanks for listening to this episode. Rob, thanks as always for helping out. This was a lot of fun, and we're going to see you next episode.